Hi, I'm Dana Diamond. My pronouns are she and her.
My name is Lala Freeman, and I am from Albany, New York, and my pronouns are she and her.
Hello, my name is Mother Lamia, AM, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Well, now to a Fox 5 investigation. 2 months in the making, a Manhattan neighborhood terrorized by sex, drugs, and break-ins. And we have video that shows it all. People living in the middle of it say not enough is being done to keep them safe, and they want out.
Fox 5's Lisa Evers with the exclusive video that will have a lot of people talking tomorrow.
This is 8th Avenue in Chelsea, a neighborhood known for its chic condos, great restaurants, and tolerant community. But now a part of it is being overrun by drug dealers and drug users, and residents here are paying the price. In this exclusive video obtained by Fox 5 News, you see a person injecting a syringe into their arm in a basement laundry room. And yet another video obtained exclusively by Fox 5, you see another person sitting casually smoking what police tell us is probably crystal meth. These are not isolated incidents. People living here on West 21st Street between 8th and 9th Avenues are trying to cope with an influx of drug addicts who have turned their once lovely neighborhood into a 24-hour drug and sex den. It's become the go-to destination for dealers and users. The drug of choice, crystal methamphetamine. To make matters even worse, all of this is happening in front of a school. Fox 5 was first there in June at PS 11, where parents tell us their children have seen way too much nudity, sex acts, drug use, and threatening behavior. For parents picking them up from school, it's like a walk through Dante's Inferno.
We have people going around the block for the past 3 years, taking drugs, having sex in the basements, break-ins, different type of intrusions. But basically we feel like the area is not safe for our kids.
And what's worse is that it's not just at night. During the day you see them sitting over here shooting up, smoking. I find pipes, I find needles in the street. These little kids are playing right here.
Residents and police tell us the construction scaffolding on much of West 21st Street and around the corner on 8th Avenue provides a perfect cover for illegal activity.
So my first question to you is actually like a 3-part question. What got you into using substance? What was your drug of choice? And like, how often did you use it at first?
Okay, well, my drug of choice was heroin. How I first started using it is I was in a new relationship. At the time was my boyfriend, now is my ex-husband. We're still friends, but we were at his brother's house. It was right on the same floor, next apartment. And just a couple of friends were over and they broke out these little bags of heroin. And I didn't know at the time. At the time, I think I had been smoking weed for many years, but I didn't use any other substance. And I wasn't really a drinker, wine with dinner sometimes with family, but I didn't really, drinking wasn't my thing. So I was I had just come home from my first year of college. So I went to college when I was 17 years old, and I was the youngest of my crew. I couldn't even go to the bars. You had to be 18. So being away at school, I felt a little bit, I always had very low self-esteem and I was painfully shy. So really this was the year after I came home from my first year away at college. I was up in Saratoga Springs, New York at Skidmore College, and I just didn't feel like I could manage. I felt behind. I felt, I didn't have my mother's support there. And she was a big part of my life. And so when I came back home, I started going to some courses at Parsons School of Design, which is now the new school for social research. And I took some courses in calligraphy, the now dead art of calligraphy, because everything's on computers now. So this is how old I am. And calligraphy and photography. And so that's where I was at when I met my now ex-husband. We had been dating for a while, and we went over to his brother's house. We moved in together, and his brother was next door. They were doing this drug. I didn't know what it was. So they came around to my ex-husband and they gave him some. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I do some? So I did like what we called a one-on-one, a little bit of heroin, one in each nostril. And I still had to go home and finish an art project. It was a calligraphy project. And I remember going back home. Yeah, we hadn't moved in yet because I was going back home to my mom's house after our date. And I remember doing this incredible piece of calligraphy that got, not only did I pass that course with it, but I got a special commendation and it was exhibited and all that. And all I know is it felt like what was missing inside of me, like I had a hole all these years, my whole life, and the hole closed up. It was like when I did that heroin, I had confidence, I could speak, my creative juices flowed because all that anxiety wasn't there, I wasn't caught up in my head. And so I learned very early on in my substance use that it felt like that was the piece that was missing from me. So I went from here and there doing it with him to the weekends. We moved in together, and then of course the weekends turn into one night a week, then 2 nights a week. Then you start to get a habit. We call it a chippy, which is the addiction part of especially heroin use, the opiates, which then are physically as well as mentally and emotionally and always addictive. But then I ended up getting a habit physically, so I couldn't do without it.
So let's see, starting out with my journey in substance misuse, I was a late teen, I think 19, 20. No, I take that back. I push it to 23. I was introduced to coke. That was my first illicit street drug that I partook in. And the way that came about was through escorting. And after that, then became something that I tried doing socially, but that didn't last long at all for me. And so when I was younger, making money, a lot of times the dates will offer to pay you more money if you engage in, cocaine or whatever drug of choice it was that they had. The particular client that I had, it was cocaine. And so he was like, I'll pay you $100 extra if you do lines with me. And so I was like, okay, this is my first time. I didn't hang out around in circles that was into drugs. And so I tried it. And so every time from there on out, as I continued to see him throughout the years, that's what I partake in doing cocaine. And then one night I was like, okay, let me try to do it amongst my friends at the club. And I blew $200 in one night at the club. And I was like, oh, no ma'am. And so that was a wrap for me. And so after that, I no longer did cocaine socially. It was just, when I had clients.
Okay, and yeah.
Yes, $200 because they would sell the little $10 vials. So honey, you start out with a little 60 girl, but then you end up sharing with people. And so that's another thing that turned me off early in the game. It's like, okay, drugs cost too much money to be freeloading, honey. So for me, it was like, no ma'am. I said, I would never do that, never again. And so, like I said, it just allowed me to only indulge in cocaine when I was with my clients.
Okay, that's something I definitely want to bring up a little later on, because we're talking about something that it costs a lot.
Yes.
And so I want to get into that. Now, at what, I remember you mentioned, I think it was just before the pandemic happened.
Yes.
You also were using another substance. Can we talk about that part as well?
Yes, but before I go into that, I want to insert a lead up to it because illicit street drugs wasn't my drug of choice. For me, it was alcohol. You know how people talk about like gateways, if it's such a thing. But I suffered from alcoholism, and from that led to now me being more comfortable indulging in cocaine later on in life, socially. And then when it comes to the crystal meth, once again, that was brought to me by a client, and I was like, oh, I want to try it because I was told, that it really increases your sex drive, and I was like, okay, that goes hand in hand. And so that's how I got introduced to crystal meth. And that was a short-lived addiction, if you want to call it, and I'm happy that I'm no longer in the grips of using drugs. I've been sober and serene for 2.5 years, and so I'm really proud of that.
Well, what got me into it, I think more so it was like the peer pressure of like the group of people that I was around, for the kind of environment that I wanted to be in. Like example, being in New York City, nightlife is very fast, fun, just dancing and going to the next party. And so sometimes, people like to add things to the mix to heighten the experience. So for me, cocaine originally was something that was very fun. It was very much, it was very nostalgic for me because I created great bonds with people. I was introduced to many different people that I kind of not looked up to, but that I idolized in the nightlife, and so it, just kind of, it was fun. It was more of a fun thing. It was something fun. Interestingly enough, both of my parents were in the NA groups. And my father was actually a well-known spokesperson and mentor for many people in Albany. So substance abuse has never been unfamiliar for me. If anything, it kind of not made me interested, but it just made me more aware. So I didn't think that it was a problem because I knew what I didn't want to do, and that was become strung out on the streets like you see people out here. So I was sort of oh, okay, we're in the clubs, cool people are doing it, my people that I like were doing it, everybody was doing it. So that goes back to the peer pressure as well.
So I understand and I accept addiction as a disease. I also understand the way that I define a drug is anything that is mind or mood altering, that and that takes me out of myself, right? So my first substance was alcohol, shortly thereafter followed by marijuana. However, my first drug was sex. And so my first drug was sex, and sex. So sex was something that I sort of discovered or fell into or became aware of at a very early age. So I was about 9 or 10 when I started to feel the hormonal surges, and not really understanding the concept of sex, what, when, where, or who did what to whom. But I knew that I was feeling this awakening, and that I was feeling things for boys that I wasn't feeling for girls. And I didn't really understand what homosexuality was, but But what I did know was that it was something that like would take hold. It was something that was very powerful. It was something that it was like fever. It felt like fever. It literally, yeah. And so, but it was also something that I knew that I shouldn't talk about. And so, but it was constantly on my mind. And so I would always find opportunities to bring up sex, even though I wasn't really understanding it, with certain people that I thought like somehow, I don't know, it was just, I was moving in ways that later I applied to how I moved when I started to use substances. So I'm not gonna overcomplicate that. I will just say that sex was my first drug, and it was the first mood and mind altering thing that took me out of myself, that I chased. And then eventually when I would start to have sex, there was this sort of high associated with it. And then once I would climax, there was a crash. And the crash was not just a physical crash, but an emotional crash. And like it would lead to all sorts of feelings of like disgust and self-loathing and like depression, and it was suicidal. So you asked about my drug of choice. My drug of choice, the one that brought me to my knees, was crystal meth. And so the stuff that I just described in terms of the chasing, the getting, the having, and the climaxing, the crash, was later mimicked by my meth use. And my meth use was very tied to sex. And so, although it was the substance that brought me to my knees, what it did was fuel the sexual compulsion, if that makes sense. So that's how I understand my disease today. And although, and then how much did I use? So, which was the last piece of the 3-part question, right? So in terms of drinking and smoking marijuana, when I first picked those drugs up, because to me, alcohol is a drug, right? And so I think it was just kind of here and there, like the occasional weekends. And I will be perfectly honest with you, like when it came to all the drugs that I tried, I didn't really like them at first. You know, I pretty much had the same experiences with all the substances that I tried. It was all around trying to fit in, or like, you know, like the alcohol. I didn't try alcohol because I wanted to try alcohol. Like there were kids in school that I wanted to hang out with. I felt like I was an other and I wanted to be part of something. So, you know, I engaged with the one thing that everybody seemed to be like everybody, no matter what, like whether you were into sports or not into sports, whether you were a nerd or whether you were popular, like it didn't matter. Everybody, there was this camaraderie around alcohol. And so that's what got me into the alcohol. And the smoking weed was the same thing. I was hanging out with some kids that were smoking and I just wanted to be part of something. And so, you know, the commonality around all those things is that I didn't like them when I first did them. I didn't, the alcohol was disgusting. The taste of alcohol, the burn of alcohol, I didn't like it. Maybe I liked initially like oh yeah, I feel drunk. But, you know, like once you got past a certain point, it was too much. And with marijuana, although there were moments of laughter that I really enjoyed, like that uncontrollable laughing that you get when you first get high on marijuana, like, you know, when it's new. And so that part I think I enjoyed, and the goofiness about it. But there was also the paranoia that can sometimes be associated with marijuana, and I didn't like that. Like I became like, it was, I think the first time that I felt anxiety in my body was after smoking marijuana. And so I know some people have used it to relax. And I used to use it to relax as well. Like there's certain, like not all, cause some, you know, because all weeds are different. Like they, you know, some will hit you, they're more mental, some are more body highs. But yeah, so I don't know. I know I was kind of all over the place with that. But so I would use sporadically. All of my using though was progressive. So even though I might, you know, do a little bit of something here and there, like eventually it led to me using more and more frequently. And then eventually like I was using every week as opposed to every, you know, few weeks. And and then eventually I became a daily user and I was completely out of control. But it really was, my drug of choice was crystal meth. And it was because, because it really fueled a sexual compulsion. And there were just aspects of the meth. There were aspects of the meth high that I absolutely loathed, but there's a euphoria. And like, you know, if everything pleasure was like amplified. And so it allowed me to feel good until it didn't, you know.
They tell us after buying their heroin, crack, and crystal methamphetamine, users then walk down West 21st Street looking for a place to get high, just like this person appeared to do right in front of our cameras. You've lived here how long?
7 years.
Have you ever seen it like this?
No, definitely not. This is definitely increased. Pre-pandemic, I never experienced this personally in the way that we are seeing right now, by any means.
The drug use is now so rampant and dangerous, police tell us a 38-year-old Brooklyn man was found dead, an apparent drug overdose inside a private video booth at the Rainbow Station sex shop on 8th Avenue between 20th and 21st Streets. It's one of 3 adult businesses on the same block. It's the same location where several weeks later, police arrested 4 men in a brutal beating. In these exclusive surveillance images, you see the illegal drug use. Residents tell us the problem is getting worse despite their efforts to get help and increase security.
We've put about $60,000 worth of video intercom, magnetic locks, cameras everywhere. They've broken into a basement multiple times.
Vivek Batra says surveillance cameras have proven to be no deterrent. In this video, you see an intruder breaking into the bike room and methodically taking a bike. Residents are begging the city and the NYPD to do something.
We use the 311 app, which is great. We call the police. The police is very responsive. We had 2 break-ins. They were able to arrest the people within hours. The issue that we're seeing is in a lot of cases, they're not able to detain the person. So sometimes they're not able to do the arrest that we need them to do.
We took the residents' concerns to the NYPD's 10th Precinct Commanding Officer, Captain Robert Galt.
This is certainly an area that there's a lot of activity going on.
I asked Captain Galt to walk the neighborhood with me at night. The core issue here, changes in the bail laws, where those arrested cannot be held behind bars.
Our patrol arrests are up 37% right now, year to date. And then when you look at the narcotics level arrests, also we're at a 37% increase year to date. So we're arresting the individuals, we're bringing them in, but what we're seeing, unfortunately, is they're right back out there and the addiction doesn't go away.
During our first visit in June, there was a heightened police presence from the 10th Precinct, but that was only after we arrived with our cameras rolling.
The police are trying to do their bit and they say their hands are tied, basically, because all they can do is arrest them, write a report, and they're out in minutes. And then they're back here all over again.
It's a frustrating situation Mayor Eric Adams calls catch, release, repeat. Captain Galt says it happens nearly every day. In fact, one man they arrested recently for drug possession had 151 previous arrests. He was issued a desk appearance ticket and released a couple of hours later.